From amazing tales of extreme conditions to pets locked in unfortunate solitude for many years, stay tuned to number 1 to hear these stories of amazing pet reunions. Number 10. Tuff the Dog. The sad fact of life is that sometimes animals get lost without the owners having a hand in doing anything, like accidentally leaving a fence unlocked or a door open. Such is the case with Tuff, a Labrador who was riding with his owner Chris Jackson in his truck. Jackson went to a bar with his dog and chained him up outside. Then he went inside to have a drink. The problem came when a person saw the dog chained up and decided to release him or potentially steal him. It's honestly not that clear. But by the time that Jackson had left the bar, Tuff was gone. As soon as he was home, Jackson and his girlfriend spread flyers around town about Tuff's disappearance, and many people saw him, but weren't able to catch him. Here's the twist. When he was finally caught, he was only about 3 miles away from Jackson's home. Why is that significant? Because the house was 18 miles from the bar that Jackson was at when Tuff was released, meaning that he had crossed a 15-mile distance on his own. Knowing that he was going the right way, the dog just wanted to go home. Nothing wrong with that, right? Number 9. Laser the Beagle. While animals are incredibly intelligent, they have many of the same reactions to things as humans do, and sometimes even heightened versions of them, like fear. So when a 3-year-old beagle named Laser heard a fireworks display going off while they were on vacation in a cottage, he bolted, afraid for his life. The family returned home and put up flyers to look for Laser. The flyers worked, and many calls came through to them about Laser and his possible location. However, the more that calls came in, the more the family realized that something was up. For all the sightings of Laser weren't from the vacation spot, but rather from areas that were getting eerily close to their house. Sure enough, Laser was eventually caught near a schoolyard, one that was very close to where the family was living. What's the catch? Well, Laser somehow traveled 50 miles from the vacation spot and then made it over roads and various terrain back to where the family lived. While that may not be impressive at first glance, Laser had only lived with the family for 1 month. So for him to know the way back to them, pretty cool. Number 8. Nigel the Parrot. This is the story of a man named Darren Chick who had a parrot that he called Nigel. But before we learn about Nigel's amazing story, take a moment to like this video and join the Zero to Hero community by clicking the subscribe button below. Darren was British, and so when he talked with Nigel, Nigel responded with a British accent. You know, like a good parrot should. However, in 2010, Nigel somehow had flown away, leaving Darren heartbroken. Let's fast forward to 2014, and a person found Nigel and took him to a vet. Sure enough, Darren had been smart and had outfitted Nigel with a microchip, one of those ones you use to scan and get the information off of a pet. Seeing the information on the chip, Nigel was returned to Darren, but he was in for quite a surprise. For now, when Nigel spoke, he spoke in Spanish. Okay? Well, apparently when Nigel fled the first time, he was quickly caught and then sold to a family called the Smiths for $400. The Smiths gave the bird to their grandfather, who was very lonely and loved to talk to the bird. Nigel flew the coop again after 4 years with them, and that's how he got back to Darren. Nigel's return made the news, and the Smiths saw this and contacted Darren to let him know what had happened. And Darren, knowing what to do, graciously returned the bird to the Smith family. Number 7. Suuka the Cat. While amazing, I can't help but to wonder if the cat got a bit of a raw deal here. I'll explain. There was a cat named Suuka who lived in England with her owners Helen and Philip Johns. They were very happy together. Then one day Suuka somehow got out of the house and started to wander around. And by wander, I mean that this cat walked 30 miles away from the house. That's a lot of walking for a cat. But it gets better. Suuka eventually ended up at the Ginster's pastry factory. Whether by luck or divine fate, the cat was seen by the workers at the factory and they instantly fell in love. Thinking that they had hit the jackpot, they took Suuka in and renamed the cat George. And they made it the unofficial mascot of the plant. Yet it still gets better, for Suuka was treated like royalty, including being fed meat that would usually go into the pies that the plant made. 3 years passed by. Suuka was still the mascot for the factory, and then the workers realized they had never taken George to the vet. and when they did, they found a microchip, one that pointed them to the Johns family. Lucy was returned, albeit with many extra pounds now attached to it. Number 6. Moon the Husky. Doug Dashel had 3 dogs, and one day he decided to go out with them on a trip. Yet, during the journey, he had to use the restroom, so he stopped the car, did his business, and returned. When he did though, one of his dogs, a Siberian Husky named Moon, had somehow bolted from the truck. Naturally worried, Dashel searched the area for Moon but didn't find the Husky, so he went to his home in Ely, Nevada. What Dashel didn't know at the time was that Moon was on his way home, which isn't surprising given some of the other pets you've already heard about. But the difference with Moon was that, to get home, the dog had to cross a river, a desert, and a mountain range. Not only did Moon do that, he did it all in a week. In fact, the journey was so unbelievable that some refused to think that the dog did it without human help. But Dashel honestly wasn't surprised, especially when the dog smelled like a skunk upon returning home, emphasizing how wild the Husky had to get in order to live through the journey. Number 5. Kooza the Cat. There are many bad places where it would be terrible to lose an animal, but I think we can all agree that losing a cat in Soviet Union-controlled Russia is indeed a bad thing. Not just because of who was there at the time, but because Russia can be a quite unforgiving country due to its terrain, weather, and predators. So when Kooza the Cat ran away from his family while vacationing with them, the owner soon gave up hope after lots of searching. Little did they know that Kooza was on its way home. It was just going to take a bit to get there, like 3 months. Now, after hearing many of these stories, you may wonder why it took that long to get home. Well, that's because Kooza somehow made it across 1,300 miles of Russian terrain and made it back home without much injury. The only things that were different about Kooza when its owners had him once again was that his tail had been slightly bitten, his claws were basically gone, and he had lost some weight. Given the 1,300-mile trek, that's a pretty good outcome, don't you think? Number 4. Sage the Dog. Sage was a German Shepherd, and this was a very loyal and punctual dog, so much so that every day the dog would be waiting for his owner on the steps to his house. But one day, Sage wasn't there. A week passed, and the owner gave up hope. Thankfully though, Sage didn't give up on life. Somehow, someway, Sage had gotten shot, for Sage had loads of shotgun pellets in her stomach. Yet despite this, Sage was able to make it back to her owner, who took the dog to the vet to get healed up. The vet's explanation for the feat was that the dog had entered a primal state called wolf mode, where the body used all the energy it had to keep going until the dog got to its destination. And it's a good thing it worked. Number 3. Suuka the Cat. In 2011, a tsunami hit part of Japan. When it did, the massive wave hit tall buildings, including one that had a black cat named Suuka. The power of the water took the cat and pulled it very far from its home. A few years later, a couple was hiking in a forest, one that was near the home of Suuka, and they were exploring when they saw a cat in a tree. They got up there, got the cat, and noticed a tag with instructions on how to bring the cat home. Suuka is a bit of a mystery in terms of a reunion because it's unclear what happened in the 3 years since the tsunami took her away. Many speculate that Suuka was left in a tree after the tsunami wave had receded and then stayed there afterwards because it was like a new home to her. Whatever kept her alive, she was able to get home again, and that is awesome. Number 2. Manuela the Tortoise. When losing a pet, it's hard. But when you find the pet, all's well again. When you find that pet was lost within your own house for 30 years and it's still alive, you must have a tortoise. This very true story comes from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where a family called the Almeidas had a tortoise named Manuela. This tortoise was beloved by the family, but then one day he disappeared. How does a tortoise disappear? Well, the Almeida family was having work done on their house, and because of this, the front door was left open for long periods of time, so they just assumed Manuela had gone out through there. Fast forward 30 years, and the Almeida family had lost their patriarch, and thus they were cleaning out the house that they once lived in as kids. They went into a storeroom within the house which contained a ton of boxes and junk, and within one of the boxes was Manuela. How could the tortoise survive that long? Well, this particular breed of tortoise can go 2 to 3 years without eating anything. Plus, the place he was stuck in had termites, so he could just eat those when he needed. Still, that's a very boring 30 years, even for a tortoise. Number 1. Giggle Blizzard the Cat. This story is so epic, I almost couldn't believe it until I saw the pictures of Giggle Blizzard. Yes, that's the cat's real name. So, somehow Giggle Blizzard found itself lost and far away from home. The cat's owner, Tracy, did all that she could to bring awareness to her cat being missing, but no one had reported any sightings. This was likely because of the situation that Giggle Blizzard found itself in. You see, the cat had gotten its back legs utterly crushed by a car. Think about that. This cat basically lost its back 2 legs, which meant that mobility would have been an extreme issue. But did the cat care? Nope. It dragged itself across loads of terrain for 11 days. That's right, 11 days it moved towards its home. Slowly, surely, epically. Eventually, Giggle Blizzard made it back to the welcoming arms of Tracy, and this cat's legend will now be forever told. What did you think about these amazing reunions? Let us know in the comments below, and take care.